Hey, y'all, welcome in. I tried to do a live chat before the game. It did not work. Gonna have to rethink my audio setup um, because it was way too loud for the headphones for the mics that I brought. So next week, 2 weeks from now at the Dome, I'm gonna try that again with a better setup. But I did want to come on here and do a quick post game reaction to what we saw in this final preseason game, which I thought we saw a lot of really encouraging things from the Saints, especially that first team offense. So if you have any questions, comments, reactions, throw them in the chat. I'll get to them. I'm gonna try to do this quick because it's late, and I'd like to go to sleep at some point tonight, but I have some time before things kind of get going. So first off, let me bring up the stats here because I thought that Jameis in particular looked on point, 4 for 4, 59 yards. Mark Ingram finished off the touchdown, but the most impressive thing Jameis did was not get rattled on 1st and 20, 1st and 15. That possession, he never even saw third down on those series. He completed 2nd and 14 to Jarvis for 20 yards. He didn't take the free money underneath. I think if you're going back through and you're looking at the tape, you're probably like, probably take that underneath throw in a game because they're giving it to you. You're giving you 8-9 yards, catch and run, turn a 2nd and 14 into a 3rd and 5, manageable. He threw to Jarvis, who's probably triple covered, but he did find the space, and it was a good throw. And I think in this circumstance, you want to see him kind of test his limits. And I thought he did a good job. So I'm not going to get too on him. And I think last year in particular, I probably would have been more critical of that throw just because of who he would have been targeting in that coverage. This year with Jarvis, if that was Mike Thomas, for example, even a Chris Olave, it's like, okay, I trust the talent to go make a play, and I trust my arm to put it where it needs to be. And I know Jarvis is going to make me look good. So I do think that, the aggressive tack there worked, especially in a tie game. If you're ahead, it's a little different. But I think he handled that situation well. 1st and 15, I think he hit Jarvis again on 2nd down for that first down. He had a 19-yard pass to Chris Olave on that drive. These are just weapons that the Saints did not have last year. It was a complete change it was a paradigm shift in how this offense can operate because you have weapons. You have weapons for the first time since Jameis has been in charge of this offense, which has only been 2 years. But I think that what he did tonight is really encouraging, and it makes you not have to wonder going into week 1 in Atlanta. He went out there, he took a hit. He's probably going to be sore tomorrow, but that's okay. You have a week off to kind of get ready and kind of figure out, what's ailing you. There were some injuries in this game that are a little bit more concerning. Dennis Allen said that Trevor Penning is dealing with a toe injury. Tre'Quan Smith is dealing with a shoulder injury. He wouldn't go into how severe either of those were, but knowing that James Hurst is dealing with a foot injury himself, DA didn't indicated that it wasn't going to be a long-term issue, but it's still something to keep in mind that both your presumptive starting left tackle and backup left tackle are dealing with foot injuries 2 weeks before the season starts. So you got to start to wonder, okay, what happens if neither of them can go? Who is the option there? I thought Derek Kelly looked solid, but I don't want him to be the starting left tackle week 1. So hopefully you can get one of those guys back healthy. I think James Hurst is closer than, tonight might indicate. A lot of the starters were out there. He wasn't, but I think that was more just, he's dealing with something. There's no point in pushing him out there and risking hurting it worse when, you've seen what you need to see out of him, and it's more about getting Trevor Penning reps. I am a little worried about Trevor Penning, just in the sense that, he get carted back to the locker room. That's a concern. But toe, if a toe injury keeps you out for an extended period of time, then I would question your toughness. And I don't think Trevor Penning is a guy who's going to allow a toe injury to keep him out for a long time, but we'll see. Those can be more significant, and we don't know exactly what we're looking at there in terms of the severity. So that's something. Tony Jones got dinged up, but it looks like he came back fine. Albert Huggins was carted off the field. That looked like a significant injury. I don't know if he's going to make the roster anyway, but that's not a great sign for him. 2 days before the cutdowns, I think there might be one more injury, but guys who stood out. Kirk Merritt, I thought, had his best game. He didn't play running back. After watching him work with the running backs all week, he didn't get a single rep at running back. And I asked him, was that the plan, or was it kind of figure it out and see how it goes? He said, no, it was the plan to get his action at wide receiver. So it was a red herring. We didn't see it. I still think he played really well. He caught that touchdown from Ian Book. He had a couple nice plays. He broke some tackles. He showed you that kind of running back skill set at wide receiver. And I think he's going to be a practice squad guy. Hopefully they can keep him, because I think he has a lot of utility as that kind of running back wide receiver option down the road. He's a guy you can bring up and be confident in. I thought Lucas Krull played really well. He had 4 catches. He showed me a lot, considering we really haven't seen anything from him. The only thing we saw from him in the preseason to this point was that touchdown pass that got wiped off the board last week because of offensive pass interference. His first catch came from Andy Dalton, and I do think that is rough tape, because he made a nice catch. He went to the ground, but then he fumbled, and the ball went out of bounds, right? It didn't hurt the team on that drive, but when you're going over tape and you're evaluating a guy, that's still not a good thing. That's gonna be a teaching point, because you can't fumble the ball. It went out of bounds, so you didn't get hurt there. But there's a lot of situations where that doesn't go out of bounds, and it turns it from a nice play into a turnover that I think it was about the 40-yard line. That can change a game. So that's something that I guarantee you will not go overlooked when the coaches kind of look at it. Another one like that, Tre'Quan Smith. It turned into that kind of wild, ricochet catch by Marquez Callaway that ended up not being a touchdown because the referees blew it dead, because they always seem to screw something up whenever the Saints play. And that's, it was really exciting. It was probably the most exciting moment of the game. And you saw the replay, and DA challenged it. He got it right. They overturned it. It was a first down. But that doesn't kind of paper the success of that play in the stat sheet isn't going to paper over the fact that Tre'Quan Smith not only didn't catch the ball, he flicked it up in the air where it could have gone to anybody. Tre'Quan Smith, the fake Tre'Quan Smith, is back. He's the best. Tre'Quan is dealing with a shoulder injury. I am now worried. I all through my roster projections and everything, I kind of felt really confident that, they brought him back for a very specific reason. And it was to do the dirty work, to do the blocking wide receiver, to get out in special teams. And I just, you watch the product, and I just don't know if it's worth a roster spot, because you're going to have to trust these other guys to block too. And if you're trying to make a tough decision, I think the decision is whether you keep, I don't think it's whether you keep Tre'Quan or somebody else. I think it's whether you keep 5 or 6 receivers. And if you keep 5, then that puts Tre'Quan very, very on the bubble, and probably doesn't make it, because what we saw from the last few games, or at least the 2 games that Andy Dalton started, Andy Dalton and Marquez Callaway have a really good connection. And if Andy Dalton ever has to get in the game, that means something to the coaches. And Marquez is a guy that they trust. Marquez is a guy that they like. He can return kicks. He can play special teams. So if it came down to Tre'Quan or Marquez, I know who I'm going with, and it's Marquez. But there were good things too. I do still have a lot of questions at linebacker. I don't know if we really saw anything tonight that put a stamp on it for anybody. It's going to be a situation where you have to go through the tape and try to figure it out. But I still think that Nephi Sewell is probably on the right end of that bubble. Eric Wilson's another guy. I still think Zach Vaughn is a cut. I think John Bostic is probably a cut, because I think you're keeping Caden Ellis. I think the keepers at linebacker, obviously DeMario, who played tonight. I was surprised he was out there, but he did play. He looked good. Pete Werner, who didn't play tonight, but obviously he's a keeper. He's going to be the starter at will if he can ever get healthy. And then Andrew Dow is a special teams contributor. He's sticking around. So those 3 are safe. And then the other 3, I think you're keeping 3 more linebackers, because you don't know who to trust yet. And you're keeping Nephi Sewell, Caden Ellis, and Eric Wilson would be the 6 that I keep. But, it could go either way. Bostic could be that guy. I just think that, he got here late. He's looked good, but he's not a guy that I'm worried he's going to get claimed somewhere else. You can stash him on the practice squad and keep him around and bring him back if you need him. Let's see. Yeah, I could go either way on Bostic. I like Bostic. I just don't know if he does anything spectacular that really makes you fall head over heels for him. But he's a good player. He's a veteran. I like him. I think he goes about the game the right way. I just think if you're choosing between him or Nephi, I like the way Nephi covers. If you're choosing between him and Eric, I like the way that Eric, gets after it, forces turnovers. He just seems to be always around the ball. So yeah, and it's another position where you might be making the decision between 5 and 6. I think you keep 6, but if you end up having to keep an extra lineman because you have some injuries you're dealing with, then that might change the equation there. Okay, let's see. We just saw a glimpse of what Marquez Callaway is capable of when not going against CB1, CB2. How anyone can't see that value is beyond me. No, yeah, I like Marquez. I think, wide receiver 1 Marquez. I've said this all along. Wide receiver 1 Marquez is a tough sell. Wide receiver 5 Marquez. I don't know if you're going to find a better wide receiver option, right? He's a guy who you trust if you have to throw out there in a more featured role, and I think that he's earned that spot and he can return in a pinch, and that's good. One guy that I was pretty I had a theory about, and I feel like it panned out, was Rashid Shaheed. I think they're trying to hide him. I really do. I think they're trying to hide him so that no one thinks, oh, okay, this is a guy we can start as a returner this year, because the Saints want him for next year. Because he's a guy, it doesn't make sense that he's healthy and you would not play him in this game. Deonte Hardy was out in the third quarter fielding a punt. He didn't start the game fielding punts. Tony Jones fielded kickoffs, I believe, and Marquez Callaway fielded a punt. So why was Deonte Hardy out there fielding a punt? Well, who knows? Maybe someone who was supposed to be out there couldn't go. Maybe they were dealing with something, retaping their ankle, whatever. And so we need someone to return a punt. So you sent Deonte Hardy out there. You sent your first team punt returner who you were not putting out there for obvious reasons, which is to make sure he doesn't take a hit. That should have been Rashid, the guy you brought in to be a return ace. And the only reason you wouldn't put him out there is because you just want to hide him and keep him on the practice squad so that next year he's still around and you don't have to worry about paying Deonte because you have him. That's the only thing that makes sense to me, because he has been healthy. He's been a full participant in practice. You wouldn't just have him inactive. So I that was my theory going in, and I think it panned out, because I just can't think of any other reason that you wouldn't play him. Yeah, Kamara, Jay Black here. And on another note, Kamara looked dangerous. Yeah, I mean, Kamara looked like Kamara, and when he touches the ball, you can tell that he's different, that he is a different type of player. He just moves with a different type of speed. He cuts with a different type of intensity, and he catches the ball like a receiver. There's just so much to like about Alvin Kamara. The only question is whether he gets suspended this year. And beyond that, I have no questions about what he's going to do. You saw what this offense can do in the passing game with some of these weapons without even Mike Thomas out there. And that's only going to make life easier for Alvin. He's not going to face nearly as many loaded boxes. He's going to be able to get out in the passing game a lot more easily because no one's going to be double teaming him, because you can't. So I think Alvin has a big year. And it's just going to be a question of how many games he can actually play. Yeah, I don't think Abram has done anything to particularly secure his spot on the roster. I still think he's a good upside player, but he's a practice squad stash. I don't think he's going to get claimed on waivers. I think if you're keeping 4 running backs, which I think you have to do because you have to plan for an eventuality of Alvin potentially getting suspended, then I think it's Tony. I think he's done, he's earned it like he did last year. He earned it again. And I have questions about Dwayne Washington because he hasn't been in practice, and he's, you wonder about his health at this point. But yeah, I don't think Abram gets kept, but I do think you're trying to stash him on the practice squad. And I think he's still a good young player. But yeah, I would have liked to see a lot more from him in this preseason. He didn't have that kind of tackle breaking linebacker type, like Raging Bull running style or ability that I had hoped to see. And that's not that he's saying that he can't do that. I just think, maybe a year on the practice squad, maybe a year in NFL weight rooms, maybe a year kind of just becoming an NFL running back would do him well. And hopefully he can come back next year. I think the chemistry with Hardy was still positive, knowing there's a likelihood he won't be back. Yeah, I mean, he's trying to earn a deal, right? And that's the thing, you guys want a deal before that final season, but he's getting paid $4 million this year. He's getting a big raise this year, so he's not like he's getting. This is the most he has made. He's getting a very good chunk of change this year, and he's gonna be motivated to earn that next big contract, whether it comes from the Saints or probably will come from somebody else. Because, like I said with Rashid, the reason you're hiding him is because I think that the Saints around the league have become kind of the mecca of developing and finding special team standouts. So that's why when you cut a guy like Winston, he gets claimed by the Browns, right? That's why Justin Hardy gets signed by the Jets. That's why these guys disappear on you. And so, because teams want to take that shortcut. They don't want to, it's not all teams are good at locating and developing special teams talent. So they want that shortcut. So someone is going to overpay Deonte Hardy. But I don't think it's the team that already is good at developing those players. It's going to be somebody else. It's going to be the Jets, right? It's going to be a team that is perennially bad and overpays at positions that don't make sense to overpay at, which, one of those positions is return specialist in a league where you don't return that many kicks anymore. I say this all the time. If Devin Hester came into the league today, he might not make a roster, because return specialists just don't exist. And that's an exaggeration. Obviously, Devin Hester would find his way onto a roster because he's that good, but he was that good. But, he would not be a star. He would not be a guy he would be talked about like a Deonte Hardy, right? He might be an all-pro returner, but then everyone's like, he's a returner. What else do you do for me? And that's the question. It's a different league than it was back when you had Dwayne Harris, even who got paid a good chunk of change when he went to the Giants, and I believe the Raiders. But yeah, I think he's going to play hard. He's not going to quit on the team. But he, just like CJ, you're going to get that contract year mentality, and he might hold it against him in free agency, but I don't think he's going to. No one wants to put bad tape out there, right? You want that team to want to sign you, and I think he's going to be able to do that. I'm not sure what this means. But the Saints do specific things very well, and they put a lot of emphasis on special teams. So yes, when teams are looking to build out their special teams units and they see a player from the Saints kind of get cut loose, they're going to take a long look, and it's been traditionally that way. And the Patriots are another example, right? They've always been a team that prioritized special teams, and this is how it works. Let's see. Okay. Thanks, Troy. I appreciate that. Yeah, thanks for everyone who hopped in. As you can tell, I'm a little beat. It's been a long day. I hosted First Take from 3 to 5, and now I'm still here at 11. I am going to cut this off soon because I gotta write a little bit and then head home, and eventually I'll go to sleep. But I just wanted to get on here and run some of this stuff down, because I think it was an interesting game. We learned a lot for a preseason game. I thought there was a lot of good information. Let's see. Rose City. Big Roach couldn't put pressure on his leg foot, and Albert Huggins had a leg injury. Paging Malcolm Brown. Malcolm with Noel. The Malcolm Brown, as you spelled it, is the running back that they had in here earlier this offseason. He's not the guy you need to bring in. But yeah, Malcolm Roach, it didn't seem like a significant injury, but he definitely did suffer an injury. Hold on, I think I accidentally activated Siri. But he definitely did suffer an injury, so that's going to be something you need to look at. I think Malcolm Roach was in line to be that starter at defensive tackle next to David Onyemata. So, the good news is you have 2 weeks now, right? He doesn't have to practice for 2 weeks before he plays a game. So if it's a minor injury, and you have time to kind of get that right. But yeah, if it's more significant and you have to figure it out, I think you probably do have to go out and sign somebody. And this is, if you are in a position where you have to go looking for a player, this is the time where you kind of are in a good position to do that, because the Saints aren't the only team cutting down to 53. Every other team in the league has to cut 27 players as of Tuesday. So, you're going to be looking around and saying, okay, who dropped a defensive tackle that we have a high grade on, or that we've noticed in the past? And I wouldn't be surprised if Malcolm Brown or somebody else is on that list. But I do think Malcolm Roach has stood out, and I think if he's healthy, he's going to be that guy. Shy Tuttle is another guy that I think is going to be on this roster, and it's just a question of whether he's a starter or not. But yeah, there were a few injuries today that make you a little nervous, but that's why the getting that 4th week off is really beneficial. I think this is a way better setup with the 3 preseason games and an open week, as opposed to the 4 preseason games and then right into the regular season, because it's just that week off where you can kind of lick your wounds and get ready for a very long season. I think is really valuable, and I appreciate it personally. I I enjoy having that week off, because training camp is a grind, and you get to the end of it, and now it's like, okay, I can reset and then get into the season. They don't have a bye week until week 13. So yeah, it's gonna be a grind, but we're gonna get through it together. Let's see if there's any more here. AK is a team captain. Yeah, the team captains as they were today, I believe it was Jameis, Will Lutz, Alvin Kamara, Demario Davis, and Cam Jordan. I don't know if that's going to be their actual positional captains, but that's who was out there today, and who was written on the dry erase board in the locker room as the captain. So yeah, that's who it was. The guy who wasn't a captain today that I was surprised was JT Gray, who has been a special teams captain in the past. So that's why I'm wondering if maybe that was just a preseason game 3 thing, and it was like, oh, Will Lutz is back, let's get him out there. So we'll see how that goes. What about Dejon Dixon? I like Dejon. I think he has a really interesting skill set. I think he's a guy you want on special teams, just like I think you want Ian Book on special teams. As I was talking to Sean Fazend from Fox 8, and he brought up, you want a guy on special teams who can run around and simulate, a Marcus Mariota, a Deshaun Watson, a Lamar Jackson. Obviously, Ian Book is not Lamar Jackson. Don't quote me and say I think Ian Book is Lamar Jackson. But as we saw today, Ian Book is a pretty mobile guy. He's a good athlete. So he's a guy who I think you throw him on the practice squad, and I thought he played well. We give Ian Book all of this grief. He played well tonight, so he deserves credit for that. I'm not saying he's going to make the roster, but I think he did improve, and that's what you're looking for out of a young player. They're going to throw him on the practice squad, and he's going to be able to simulate some of these quarterbacks that a Jameis Winston and Andy Dalton couldn't simulate, because they're just not the level of athlete that Ian Book is. So he's going to be a guy who you keep around, and Dejon Dixon is a similar situation, right? You want that. The Saints have always kept a 6'4" big bodied wide receiver around, and I think part of that reason is so you can simulate big bodied wide receivers in practice. They don't have to simulate Michael Thomas, but you need a guy who can be that type of player in practice, so you can work against him and you can have him on the scout team. Mike Williams is a good example. Julio Jones is a good example. Just these guys who you just have to simulate so you can work against what you think they're going to do. So I think that's where Dejon Dixon is right now. Any of these guys who are on the practice squad, that's, if you can keep them there and they don't get claimed by someone else, that's why you want them there, because you can elevate them throughout the season. So if you end up needing them for a week, you can have them there, and hopefully you can keep them around and bring them back next year, and maybe they can crack that nut next year when it might not be, Jarvis might not be in town, Deonte might not be in town, and there's a bit more, there's more roster spots to be had, and you have more familiarity. They're more familiar with the scheme, and maybe they can make some inroads, but I don't see him making the roster this year. Jay Black, Nephi missed a few tackles. Nephi. Although Mark Romig, the PA announcer in here, did not get the memo that it is Nephi Sewell. Someone's maybe I'll text him afterward and remind him, because it's on the pronunciation guide, but he did not get it right. So I'll wait until the cuts, because if Nephi gets cut, then it's a known issue. But if Nephi makes it, I'm gonna have to text him and let him know. But so there was a play in the first half. I know what you're talking about. It was a screen, and he sniffed it out. He was right there. And so when I was watching the replay in here, and I want to go back tomorrow, I don't know if I'll be able to see it very well on the broadcast, but maybe when the All 22 posts, I do want to look at that, because when I watched it on the replay, so he did really well to kind of sniff out the screen and get upfield and be in position to make a tackle. It looked to me like the defender had a hand in his back and just shoved him. And that's what kind of got him out of position to miss the tackle. And, if that was the case, then it's not Nephi's fault. That's a penalty that they didn't call. And so I think that tape might be forgiving. There was one other down by the goal line over here that he kind of got lost in the wash and didn't make a play on. But I thought that he covers really well, and I think that's why he's going to making this roster. He was a safety before he converted to linebacker, and he still has kind of those cover instincts. And when you're trying to figure out a guy who has value on your team as a linebacker, I think there's, just having, not elite cover skills, but above average cover skills as a linebacker, you can build on that. And so that's why I like Nephi. He's a strong dude. He's fast, and he can cover. And for a depth linebacker, I think that's really all you can hope for. So I think Nephi is going to make this roster, but we'll see. I mean, there's going to be a lot of interesting questions they have to answer on Tuesday. Let's see. Oh, we got TJ in here. I was pretty adamant about Tre'Quan feeling like he had his roster spot kind of sewn up, just in terms of what he does in a blocking game and kind of the dirty work. But if he's hurt, because that was when we talked to Trey at the beginning of camp, he didn't paper over the fact that he has not been hurt. He was like, we asked him what your biggest goals are in camp this year, and he said, I want to get through camp healthy. And so he knows that his health has been one of the biggest issues for him. And if he has a significant shoulder injury, we don't know. He went back to the locker room after that play. If he has an injury that's going to keep him out for an extended period of time, I wouldn't be surprised if they throw him in IR. Which I think would be the smart move, because he's a guy who you want to keep around. You like him as a player. You like what he can do. He knows your offense. So I don't know if he's done in New Orleans, but I do think that it's going to be hard to keep him on the roster, especially if he's hurt, if he's not going to be available week 1. Because you can bring guys back. And as of right now, so here's the thing. If you put a guy on IR, and I know I have the internet in the dome is so bad. So if you're having trouble hearing me, it's because I have no internet connection, because the Wi-Fi in here is atrocious. So I apologize if that's the case. But if you put a guy on IR during camp, they're done for the season. That's just how it works. If you wait and you keep him on the active roster, and then you put him on IR after that, he is eligible to return. So I wouldn't be surprised if that's the route the Saints take, if he does have an injury that's more significant than just, put some ice on it and wake up in the morning and you're fine. Because I think, throughout the season, you might have a need for him in the offense, and, that's what you're going to do. But I don't think he kind of destroyed his value, but it's definitely going to be a lot harder now. So thanks, TJ, for watching and asking that question, because it's a good question. Let's see. I'll get one more question, and if we're talking about Tre'Quan, DA said that he has a shoulder injury, so it wasn't a wrist or anything like that, but it did look like he was in a decent bit of pain. Tedra, if you're asking me, it's Inside Black and Gold. It's on YouTube. We do the live streams of it on YouTube, like the raw version of the podcast recording. So you can check that out there. It's we go live on WWL Sports, this YouTube account. You're on Facebook. So yeah, the YouTube account is WWL Sports. So if you want to catch those live recordings, that's me and Steve Geller. We've been trying to figure out some consistent times, but with camp, it's been difficult. I think with the season starting, we'll be able to be a little more consistent with it. But the podcast itself will post, usually, we post twice a week during the off season training camp, which either Monday or Tuesday, and then one on Thursday. During the regular season, it'll be Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and we'll usually record the day before, sometime in the afternoon. So Saints usually have practice in midday, then they have open locker room. We do some interviews with the players, and then we'll go back and we'll record. So that's usually what we'll do. But yeah, it's called Inside Black and Gold. Check it out. We got some really good feedback the last couple of days, and that's nice to see. So I'm glad y'all are enjoying that. Well, let's see. Let's get one more Here's a good question. Josh LaBeouf, Shia's cousin. Most people don't know that about Josh. Who makes the team at safety, do you think? Now, so the top two are easy. You have Marcus May and Tyrann Mathieu. There's no question there. Um, the last one is easy because JT Gray is the special teams standout. He's an all-pro special teamer. He's on the roster. So the question is kind of who makes it in between that. PJ Williams, I think, is a lock. So that's your fourth. There was one more. I'm blanking. Let me see. Let me pull up the roster so I don't forget anybody important. Where was it? So they list some guys as safety and some guys as DB. So I think he's going to be a DB. Okay. Oh yeah, CJ Gardner-Johnson, obviously, duh. I always mix him up because he's a slot corner, but he's technically a safety. That's your fifth safety. And then I really do think you want to keep Justin Evans. I think he's been a player who has stood out constantly. I don't think Vincent Gray is going to make it, but I do like what he showed tonight, and I like his versatility. He played corner and safety, and the Saints really love that. And I think he's going to get on the practice squad because of that. But no, Justin Evans is the guy who he's probably the closest to the bubble. He's really out of those six guys, the only one that I have any question about in terms of whether they keep him is Justin Evans. But I just think he's done so much throughout the preseason. He's always around the ball. He caught interception against the Texans. He made a special teams tackle tonight. He forced a fumble, and he had a PBU on a third down in the second half. And he's just a guy who hits hard. He's always around the ball. He's always playing hard, and I like him. I'd like to keep him around. And I think he's a guy who, if you do cut him, I think he probably does get claimed by somebody. So that's DA. We asked about Justin Evans today, and he kind of said, and this is kind of his thing when he's trying to indicate that someone has some work and they're on the bubble, he'll say, their special teams hasn't quite been up to snuff. And that's kind of what he said about Justin. But he said it in a way that was like, yeah, earlier in camp, we talked to him about how his special teams needed to improve. And I think, he's kind of indicating that I think it did. And so it sounded like he's a guy who they'll keep around. But it's going to be, we're going to go back to that question of, so what if those line injuries, if the D tackle injuries, if the left tackle injuries are significant, you have to keep someone else at those positions, then those positions where you're trying to decide whether you want to keep 5 or 6, you might have to start keeping 5, right? And so that's where it becomes difficult, and that's why when you're on that bubble, it's stressful because you don't know what's going to happen around you. If those injuries aren't significant and you feel comfortable only keeping 9 offensive linemen, 8 offensive linemen, then it becomes a lot easier to keep Justin Evans. But that's where you kind of find it. Okay. Here's one more. Over under Mike T games played 13. I'm taking the over. I really don't think that the injury right now, the hamstring for Mike Thomas, is significant. I think it's just you're getting him rest, right? No one practiced this week. You had 13 guys missing in the first 2 days of practice. It's they're being overly cautious with him. They know he's ready. It doesn't sound significant. No one's acting as if it's significant. I think you're going to get him for a majority of this season, and I think he's going to play well. I don't think he's going to be as emphasized as he had been in 2019 and even 2020, but I think he's going to be just a constant presence in this offense. And, I'm more worried about Jameis missing games than I'm worried about Mike, because, Mike is a guy who, he's going to play through stuff. Jameis has the knee is a much more difficult thing to maintain, I think. And so we'll see how it goes, but I'm confident in him. And then the last one here, Roby gives up too many plays. I agree with you on that. That deep ball, DA kind of put it on himself in terms of it wasn't his best play call ever. But I do think, you're not playing to his strengths if you're asking Bradley Roby to match up one-on-one and press man coverage on the outside with no help over the top. Marcus May was in deep center. You had Tyrann Mathieu up on the line. So he was on an island, and that's just not his strong suit. Roby, I think, is best when he's kind of in zone, kind of robber coverage. That's where he gets a lot of his interceptions. A lot of his interceptions in camp, he had at least 5 of them kind of came in that format. And, I don't think, and that's why you are good with Paulson and Marshawn on the outside with with Roby kind of working in. And if you want to go to a dime look, you have that extra DB. But yeah, that's not the look, and that's why I don't think it was really ever much of a competition between Roby and Debo, because Roby doesn't thrive in the press man coverage schemes that the Saints want to run, and that DA wants to run, that DA is traditionally run. So that's kind of where I land on that. I think Roby's a quality player. I think that if the Saints are fielding trade calls, he's probably on the top of the list of a lot of teams. A guy like Nick Vannett, Daniel Sorensen, veteran players with starting experience on team-friendly deals. That's the kind of guy you try to add at this point in the offseason if you're a team looking. But I think the Saints are going to keep him because, the depth, they have a really strong cornerback group, but the depth is not great. Once you get past those top three, and Alontae Taylor, I don't think we saw him tonight. I'll have to look at the snap counts. I don't know if he got in the field. You lose one of those guys, all of a sudden, you can assume throughout the course of a season, one of your starting corners is going to get hurt. And, if you lose Marshawn Lattimore for one game and suddenly you're talking Vincent Gray as your starter, then that's a problem. So I'd like to see Alontae Taylor get some more work, but I think you're holding on to Bradley. And I think Bradley's a solid player. I just don't think what you saw tonight was them playing to his strengths. So that's something that I think DA is aware of, and they'll remedy. But okay, that's where I'll drop it. Thanks for everyone. We got over 100 people in here. It's really cool. I always appreciate a lot of the feedback and a lot of people watching this. Make sure to check out Inside Black and Gold podcast wherever you get those. Leave us a rating, leave us a review. It's ampersand, Inside Black and Gold ampersand. Yeah, so that'll help you find it. We'll probably post this Friday. Game schedule is tough because we don't want to post on the weekend. We want to post on Monday or Tuesday. So we'll probably record on Sunday to kind of preview the roster cuts, and you just kind of give our predictions, which I hate doing that because by Tuesday it's going to be dated, but I do want to get that out there, and I want to get my thoughts on, I like making predictions, and then so people can, look at them later and be like, you were completely wrong. And sometimes I'm wrong, sometimes I'm right. I was right about Rashid Shaheed. So, hey, squirrels, nuts, blindness, that whole sort of thing. So look for that. But yeah, everyone who engages, I always appreciate it. Y'all are great. And next stop, LSU in this building a week from Sunday, which is going to be weird. I'll be here for that too. And then on to Atlanta. Woo! That's my energy for the night. All right. Thanks, y'all. Be easy. Peace.